And we're live. If you were in Hope's position and deciding on a college major now, what would you choose to make money, and what would you choose for fun, or what you want to learn more about?
She should choose for money engineering, since there are going to be a fuck ton of. I mean, she's female, so there's going to be a lot of incentives to try and get her into certain programs and get her into certain areas, and so that's just a given. Like,
And
if
by
she
the
has
way,
the mind for
and
it,
throughout
it'd be
her
great
whole
for
career, right? Like, she'll be 30
Yeah.
years old and they'll be like, there's hardly any female engineers here. We should promote them and give them shit for no fucking reason. Carry on.
Yeah, so that would be a good one for money, and you learn a lot of valuable skills. For fun, I'd probably like history for fun. At least for me, that would be my fun one, because learning about history is really interesting, especially if you can take classes on I took a class on Greek and Roman history, like very, very in depth. And it was fascinating. Like, I never minded having to read for that class, because it was almost like, oh, I wonder what fucking like Sophocles was up to then, or like, oh, like, look at this cool strategy the Romans used in war, and they actually kept good records, so we know this. Unlike the Dark Ages, where they didn't keep as good a record, so we don't know exactly their battle strategy. And sometimes, like, it was fascinating. So history.
Did you learn about Caligula?
Yeah,
well,
we did.
Did he actually like whore out the senators' wives to pay the national debt down? Wasn't that a thing?
I don't remember it being senators' wives. Maybe it was. I don't remember a ton about Caligula, but I do remember that story being interesting. I honestly don't remember the ins and outs of it. It's good though.
I'm trying to think for money. See, I'm so concerned about like outsourcing and the shrinking world and the globalization. I'd send her to something having to do with medical, right? Physical therapy, speech therapy, doctor, physician's assistant is a really good one. Something in that world. Like, you can be a physician's assistant with 2 years after college, and then you can earn like a doctor's practice would. They both open the same kind of business and do their thing as a family doctor. So that's for money. I think I'd send her somewhere in the medical world, dentist. Go on.
Oh, go ahead. I forgot there was a fun one too.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say for money, she'll always have steady work as a paramotor mechanic.
Yes. Get her into the trades. Yeah.
No, for fun to me, I don't know, because it's weird, because I'm thinking like what would be fun for me and what would be fun for her. Maybe she likes travel. I don't know. Maybe
theater.
It's this thing. It's like, what would you go to school for? Or because that makes it sound like, oh, we're gonna get on a career path and it's gonna end up here, and then here lets you do this. But to me, it's like, could we be a flight attendant for 2 years, like during school maybe, or like when we're off school or something, and like get to travel for free? Flight attendant always struck me as a cool job, that it seems like it's easier to get if you're a girl, because I've never seen a straight flight attendant.
My mom did that in I guess it was the 80s. She was a flight attendant for a couple of years and just kind of traveled the world, like probably not like the world, probably more like the U.S.
The airports of the globe.
The airports of the globe. From Newark to Lambert Airport here in St. Louis, all the way to Atlanta, like back and forth in the air. Exotic.
If Hope wanted to straight up just enjoy herself and get like an MRS degree of some sort, I think it'd be theater. I think that's what she would like doing.
She's not going to find a lot of people who want to take her up on that MRS degree in theater.
Well, that MRS degree doesn't really matter what you major in, I think, right?
I was joking, because they'd be gay in the theater department.
Yes, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, she'd need to cross-pollinate with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
She'd need to, go to a club with some engineers or, PreLaw people. Maybe not PreLaw. The more I talk to friends who have done PreLaw and whatnot, the more it's like a lot of them seem to regret it, because apparently the market of people getting into law and attorneys is incredibly flooded. Like, there are more attorneys looking for work than there is work for attorneys to do, so they're having to work in practices that they didn't think they would have to. That could be totally wrong, but that's what I've heard.
I don't know many happy attorneys either. Like, the different kind. You could either be an attorney that like pores over contracts in detail. That job sucks. That's a depressing office tied to your desk bullshit job. You could be like a tax attorney. That's a popular one. Oh my God. Everyone you're dealing with is like at the worst moment of their life. I talked to an attorney who did real estate closings primarily. And that was kind of cool. It's almost like being the doctor that does baby deliveries. Like there's a lot of good days in that. People are happy. But he used to be a criminal attorney. He's like, the problem with being a criminal attorney is you're dealing with criminals all the time. And, you know, in there, you've got, like, again, people who are trouble, people who lie to you, people who, you know, maybe don't pay their bills. You don't want to be a criminal attorney. You work with the worst people. There's all sorts of attorney jobs, and they're all shitty. It's not one I...
Yeah, it seems so common that attorneys get their law degree and then practice for like 18 months and then are like, fuck this. I'm going to go be some kind of political correspondent, or I'm going to be a writer, or I'm going to go be some kind of consultant somewhere legally, or like, it seems like so many attorneys, as soon as they're able to practice, they're like, this sucks. Like, I have no interest in being this guy. Because most people aren't, like, the overwhelming majority of attorneys are not trial attorneys. Most of them would not do that well, standing up in front of a judge and like pleading their case, because that's not what their day-to-day thing is. Most of them are just doing a bunch of meticulous paperwork and delegating research to paralegals all day. And it does not sound exciting.
That is a great description of what an attorney really... You know attorneys in real life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, yeah, it's not surprising that you know what the real deal is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like going into college, it was always like, I always think of like being a doctor, like going into the medical field, medical school. I thought of that as like the tippity top. And then I thought of like, and then probably law school, like those people are going to be going somewhere, and then probably engineers, and then probably whatever. Like it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realized like, no, it's like medical and then engineers, real close, depending on the kind of engineering. And then way down here in a distant third, if it even is still third, is being an attorney, because they're going to come out of school with an overwhelming amount of debt and most likely hate their first job, because they're going to be like, I just went to school for an extra 3 years, busted my fucking hump in a shit apartment, racking up debt, and now I'm not making anything defending this guy that clearly was selling crack cocaine. Like,
it's the story my father told me. I mean, in fast forward, I worked with computers. I loved it with all my core for like 6, 8, 10 years, something like that. And everyone in the family was like, you know, Woody's so great. He's good at his job and he loves his job. It's his passion. Everything is happy and joyous. And I was like, Dad, truth is, like, I don't love it like I once did. And he's like, oh yeah, that take you 8 years to figure out? You're in pretty good shape. If you were a lawyer, it'd take you 8 weeks. And, you know, like that burned into my head. Like, oh yeah, I did pretty well. Took me 8 years before the walk from the car to the office was one I'd rather not take. That's not bad. Because in accounting, it was like 4 weeks. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Kyle, what would you have, like, did you always know that you weren't going to do college, or was there kind of a time where you were like, okay, I am going to go to college and I'm going to do this. I'm going to study business administration or whatever. Like, how deep did you get into that thought process at the time?
I don't know. I've had a lot of thoughts, but it always seemed like a business would be the way to go. It always seemed like you could either like, it seemed like you could get on top one or two ways. You could climb forever, or you could kind of, I don't know, kind of wedge your way in the middle and start there. It seemed like you didn't have to start at base camp. It seemed like the college was starting all the way at base camp, which is super safe and almost a guaranteed thing, because you're getting used to not having oxygen and stuff. But it was just like, I just want to start climbing. Can I climb now? Like it'll be all right if I fall, right? I'm still young. And I kind of had that mindset. I wanted to own a business. I wanted to own something that made money.
You told the story once of like a brother-in-law or something who went from like, I'm going to mess it up. Maybe you can fix it. But like lawn mowing to power washing to something else to a whole what they do?
It's my half sister's husband, so brother-in-law. But they got pregnant with twins when they were both like 19 years old or something like that, and neither one of them had any money or prospects or whatever. So he just worked his ass off with whatever he could. His father owned a granite company, but wasn't cutting him any slack at all. Like there was no money to be had. But he had a job there. He worked there during the day. But then he bought himself a pressure washer so he could pressure wash houses on the weekends. So he'd work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. In the afternoons, he pressure washed houses. And then all weekend, he pressure washed houses. until he had like enough money to do a little bit better. And then he had 2 pressure washers, and he got his like cousin to come help him and made more money. And I don't know. Now they're very wealthy. They're millionaires. They started a chain of daycares, and for the first thing they did was buy a house to have their daycare in. And they bought another house. Now we own 2 houses, and and then they own 3, and then it was 4, and then it was let's build a place. And so now I don't know how many kids that they like daycare on a daily basis, but it's dozens and dozens. They're maybe responsible for 75 kids a day every single day, and each one of them is paying an exorbitant amount. It's so absurd. I don't remember what the number was, but it was like you get like 100 a head a day. Like that's outrageous. Like it was almost like that. It was absurd. Like each kid was like $100 bill running around, and like to take care of each kid when you have that many, it was like well Judy looks after him, and we'll get him some juice every now and then, and they do all right. It was like this so low maintenance.
We dump out about $4 worth of goldfish in the middle of the floor. Just let them have at it. They'd have a blast,
We upgrade. We used to be middle of the floor. Now we put it in a feeding trough, and all the little children come running over. And...
Yeah. Because those daycares never give you sufficient snacks or juice or anything. Like when I had to stay in like after school care as a kid, which is basically daycare that they did after school if like your parent couldn't get you, it would be like, all right, everybody gather around. We're going to go to the cafeteria, everybody in after school care, and we're going to have a snack. And they'd give us like literally an Oreo on like a napkin, and then a Dixie cup full of from concentrate orange juice, which I say that because from concentrate orange juice is shit. You need not from concentrate, because concentrated orange juice is just, it's concentrated down and they re-add water to make it into kind of orange juice. Not from concentrate means it's actually squeezed from oranges. Do
they build themselves as preschool or daycare?
I don't remember.
No, it wasn't
daycare.
Oh.
It wasn't preschool, you say. Yours wasn't, and theirs you're not sure.
Yeah, mine was not. I was like probably 11 at the time. It was just like they do it at our school. Like if you needed to stay late, they just let you stay till like 5 and they take care of you.
I look at some jobs, especially dealing with children, and I'm like, oh yeah. I would be terrible at that.
It's management though. It's just what you did with your Minecraft server, right? Like every one of your customers virtually is a child, but it's not like you got to babysit them. Like, they've got like 2 or 3 of these daycares now, or I'm out of date. They had 2 or 3 15 years ago. I don't talk to her. So they could have 10 of these things for now, or they could be bankrupt. Who knows? But I don't think that's the case. I'm sure they're doing fine. But I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it's management. She's got people hired. There are people.
What they should be doing is, you get that $100 a head for every kid, and then you contact like the marketing department at Fisher Price or something and be like, hey, I've got a great focus group here. You give me 12, 15 grand. You can send a representative here, 10 to 2, and then you can display your toys, and then we'll just set up a camera and see which ones kids like, which ones they don't. And they would absolutely pay money.
Farm the kids out as a control group.
I would find a good teacher, pay her more than the other schools do, so I don't fucking lose her, and let that shit run itself. That's what I would prefer to do with it.
I think this is daycare. The way I always thought of it
not
is
teacher,
like,
but whatever.
It's just like a fucking supervisor. You can have retarded kids do that job. Like I mean, you can anybody. You just got to look after.
Then you got
them,
to hire another one, and there's going to be times when they don't come to work. I swear, if I found a winner, I would just overpay her and let that deal with itself. Hopefully this thing is kicking off like 40 grand a year in profit, and if you pay her 3-4 more than your competitors would, great. Now it kicks off 34 grand a year or 36 grand a year in profit instead of 40. You're fine. Just pay her extra, and now you don't have to hire new people all the goddamn time.
Hire yourself a Miss Sally, like on Oz. In Oz, they're always watching this like children's puppet show with this big titted lady named Miss Sally. And at first I was like, yeah, I guess they're big. But like as it goes on, like her children's puppet show is clear that like they're working that angle. Like she's always got her boobs bouncing. The puppets are right beside them. Lots of cleavage. And then later on, that show gets canceled, and it becomes Miss Sally's like exercise show. So she's in like bikinis doing beach volleyball and stuff. I was like, Miss Sally's tits. I was hoping there were nudes of her on the internet. I couldn't find any. Yeah.
I'm sure her name isn't actually Miss Sally.
Well, that's all you had to search, though, and you got plenty of pictures of her and her cleavage. It's a beautiful thing.
That's funny.